Brain death, a hoax. I take these words from Dr. Paul Byrne, who is famous for saying them. He's been saying this for the last 40, 50 years. The brain death is a hoax. He's one of the most foremost, I guess, critics of this form, this determination of death. In an article called "Brain Death is Not Death," Byrne says or writes this. Well, it's actually a quote from what he said at a forum. The observation of a cessation of functioning of the brain or some other organ of the body does not in itself indicate destruction of even that organ, much less death of the whole person. Well, if Byrne's right, then the brain can't die. It simply can stop functioning. I'm not totally sure that this is correct. I've seen other indications. I've seen other people say the opposite. And I used to think that this objection, the objection that brain death is a hoax, organs don't die, this is just being done to make organ donation easier and to get rid of patients who are severely compromised, who we may not want to care for anymore, or find a good reason not to care for them. I used to think that that was just kind of a cheap criticism of brain death. I mean, nobody actually does that sort of thing. Until I looked into things a little more carefully, and I began to doubt it. For example, if you look at the ad hoc committee of the Harvard Medical School, their 1968 report, this was commissioned by the president to look into whether brain death could be death. And in the beginning of the report, they said this: our primary purpose is to define irreversible coma as a new criterion for death. I mean, they came out and said it. It's not death, but irreversible coma. There are two reasons why there is a need for a definition. Number one, improvements in resuscitative and supportive measures have led to increased efforts to save those who are desperately injured. Sometimes those efforts have only a partial success, so that the result is an individual whose heart continues to beat, but whose brain is irreversibly damaged. The burden is great on patients who suffer permanent loss of intellect, on their families, on the hospitals, and on those in need of hospital beds already occupied by these comatose patients. 2. Obsolete criteria for the definition of death can lead to controversy in obtaining organs for transplantation. So there it is, right in black and white. Harvard Medical School actually seems to be saying this. To get another, or maybe a clearer look at this, let's turn to Peter Singer, who, no matter what you think about him, is certainly always a perceptive critic of all these things, bioethics. In one of his books, Rethinking Life and Death, Singer said this: the Harvard Committee does not even attempt to argue that there is a need for a new definition of death, because hospitals have a lot of patients in their wards who are really dead but are being kept attached to respirators because the law does not recognize them as dead. Now, just let that sink in. I mean, if that was the case, that we've got a whole lot of people that they're dead, but our definitions don't say they're dead, so that would be a good reason to go back to the drawing board and figure, well, maybe we're wrong about the definition, or maybe there's another definition. These people are, in fact, dead, and so we need to get our laws and our ethical understanding to get up to speed. So that's a pretty damning criteria. Instead, reading back here, with unusual frankness, notice that, with unusual frankness, the committee said that a new definition was needed because irreversible comatose patients were a great burden, not only on themselves. Why to be in an irreversible coma is a burden on the patient, the committee did not say, but also on their families, hospitals, and patients waiting for beds. Fairly damning way of looking at things. I think it's in the same article, same book. Singer says this. It kind of takes the thing head on. The idea that someone is dead when their brain is dead is at best rather odd. Isn't the distinction between life and death so basic that what counts as dead for a human being also counts as dead for a dog, a parrot, a prawn, an oyster, an oat, or a cabbage. Peter Singer is obviously a very great writer too. So brain death is a weird kind of death. Is it humans die this way, but nobody else dies this way? That, again, seems to be another pretty serious sort of criticism. And I just mean to raise these for you. There's people have, there's things on both sides, and I would encourage you to follow up on this if you're interested in this. But what seems to be coming up here is two ways to look at brain death, and I would put them this way. We can think of brain death in one case, and this is kind of the more traditional view, the view that you get if you don't read the Harvard Committee's report, is just an identification of new signs to determine that death has occurred. So in this view, death is the same old reality we've always known. We're not changing death, we're just having a new way to figure out whether something has died. Or, and this may be closer to what Paul Byrne is suggesting, that brain death is the creation or the declaration of a certain state of affairs as being dead. Okay, so that's what you might call a fiat. Let's just call this death. So we have a new kind of death, even one that competes with the old reality we've always known, which might be another way of trying to understand the cultural, social misunderstandings or reactions against brain death that we have been talking about in this lesson. And that seems to me, and Singer is right, that we're doing that. That is not simply very controversial, but it seems to be ethically suspicious, ethically suspect. And I guess I'll just end this one with just the simple sort of declaration, simple sort of point is that if the committee, the Harvard Committee, if the medical establishment is trying to create or redefine death in order to make it easier to stop treating people who are severely compromised or to use their organs, then I would say they should be canceled.